Story 1. Stranger at the Door. Trent Leas and his family had just moved into his grandparents' house, a secluded estate deep in the countryside. Surrounded by vast tracts of land, they felt safe in their isolation. The house was miles from the nearest town, and they had quickly grown accustomed to the quiet that came with it. Little did they know that their peaceful new life was about to take a terrifying turn. One night, just after 1 a.m., Trent was startled awake by a notification on his phone. It was from the Ring camera on their front door, alerting him to movement. At first, he assumed it was one of their outdoor cats prowling around. But when the next notification read, "There's someone at your front door," a wave of fear washed over him. Trent picked up his phone and checked the live feed. There, in grainy night vision, was a man standing on the porch, staring directly into the camera. He looked disheveled and distressed. Trent's heart raced as he quietly alerted the rest of the family. One of his relatives pulled out a gun, and with a mixture of fear and caution, they approached the door. The man outside held up his hands in a surrendering gesture and begged for help. He said he needed to use the phone to make an emergency call. They reluctantly handed him a cell phone through the half-open door. The man fiddled with the device but couldn't make a call. After a few tense minutes, he handed the phone back and started walking down the dark, deserted street. Worried about what the man might do next, two family members decided to follow him in their truck. They saw him wandering aimlessly, heading for another house in the distance, the nearest one a half-mile away. Concerned about their neighbors, they offered to drive him into town, and he agreed, climbing into the back of the truck. As they drove, the man sat strangely still, his hands still raised, glancing nervously at the family members. When they reached town, they dropped him off, watching him slowly back away from the truck, his eyes never leaving them. The family was shocked by the encounter, but what really puzzled them was the discovery that this was not the first time the man had appeared in the area. Other residents had reported a similar figure going from house to house late at night, begging for help in the dark. No one knew whether his intentions were sincere or if he had a dark motive. The mysterious man disappeared into the night, leaving behind only questions and the uneasy feeling that their isolated home was not as safe as they had thought. Story 2. The woman with her mouth open. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, rain fell steadily late one night. The homeowner, a man who lived alone, was not home when it happened. It wasn't until the next morning, when he casually scrolled through his Ring camera notifications, that he saw something that made his blood run cold. The footage showed a middle-aged woman, drenched in rain, standing on his porch. She was holding an umbrella, but it was her face that made him shiver. Her mouth was wide open unnaturally, as if she were screaming silently. The camera captured her standing there, motionless, for what felt like an eternity, even though it was only about 20 seconds. She rang the doorbell, her mouth still open, then stood there as if waiting for something. Suddenly she closed her mouth, but only for a moment before opening it again in the same eerie way. The woman rang the doorbell a second time, her sunken eyes staring straight ahead. Then, as strangely as she had appeared, she turned and walked back into the darkness, disappearing as if she had never been there. The homeowner replayed the video several times, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He had never seen the woman before, and her behavior was completely inexplicable. Some speculated that she might have had a medical condition, but that didn't explain why she was at his doorstep in the middle of the night, ringing the doorbell of a complete stranger. The encounter left the man feeling violated, as if something supernatural had glimpsed his world. The image of the woman haunted him, her gaping mouth a terrifying reminder that some mysteries were best left unsolved. Whoever she was, whatever she wanted, he hoped he would never have to find out. Story 3. Night of the Home Invasion. In a quiet suburban town in Illinois, a woman returns home after a long day. Little does she know that she is being followed. As she pulls into the driveway and approaches the front door, two figures lurk in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Oblivious to the danger, the woman unlocks the front door and steps inside, the comfort of her home welcoming her. But as she turns to close the door, two teenage boys suddenly burst in behind her. She screams, startled and frightened, but one of the intruders quickly silences her with a harsh command: "Don't move and don't scream." The taller of the two, with a cold, determined look in his eyes, demands her car keys. His accomplice, who remains silent, glances nervously around the room. The woman, her heart pounding in her chest, hands over the keys with trembling hand. The first intruder snatched them away, and without another word, the pair fled the house. As they raced toward her car, she caught a glimpse of something she would never forget. Her life, her safety, were in the hands of these two young strangers. Inside the house, another person, a man who had been there when the teens broke in. He was silent, paralyzed by fear as events unfolded. The two teens sped away, leaving the woman and her companion shaken but unharmed. The police soon became involved and an investigation began. Days later, one of the attackers, an 18-year-old named Brendan McCrew, was arrested. However, the other teen remained at large, his identity a mystery. The woman's sense of security was shattered that night. The house, once a haven, now feels like a place where terror can strike at any moment. Thoughts of what might have happened if things had gone differently haunt her, a reminder that danger can strike when you least expect it. Story 4. The Man at the Door. In July 2021, a couple living in a modest home thought they were safe in their quiet neighborhood. But one night, their sense of security was shattered by a terrifying encounter that left them both deeply uneasy. It was late and the wife was home alone, going about her evening routine. As she passed by the kitchen window, she saw a man standing in the front yard, talking to himself. He had a long gray beard, tattoos covering his arms, and he was holding a plastic. Something about his presence sent a chill down her spine, but she tried to dismiss him as just a passer. A moment later, the doorbell rang and the man's voice echoed throughout the house. "Are you sure? Are you sure? I just have a few questions for you. Are you sure?" His words echoed, almost mechanically, as if he were stuck in a loop. The wife, who was hiding in another room, froze in fear. The man repeated the same words over and over again, growing more insistent with each knock. She didn't dare answer, praying that he would leave. But instead of leaving, he began banging on the glass, his voice growing louder and more threatening. Her husband, who was out of town, had been watching the scene unfold on the Ring camera's live feed. He used the intercom to ask who the man was, hoping to scare him. But his efforts only made things worse. The man stopped, looked directly into the camera, and his tone changed. "I want the girl in the house out," he growled. "I'll make her feel good. If she opens the door, I'll rape and kill her." The man continued his tirade, his voice filled with venom. The wife, who was on the phone to 911, could barely breathe. The man eventually left, but not before delivering one final chilling threat, his voice fading as he disappeared into the night. The police arrived shortly thereafter, and the man was found the next day in a nearby neighborhood. He was identified as Christopher Sumps, a 40-year-old fugitive from California. The couple struggled with the horror of what had almost happened. The man's terrifying words echoed in their minds. A constant... Story 5. The Masked Intruder. Late on a Sunday night in the quiet town of Bristol, Kathleen Frascarelli was relaxing after a long day. The house was quiet, and the neighborhood was even quieter. But as she prepared to go to sleep, her phone buzzed with a Ring camera notification. She checked the feed, expecting to see nothing more than a stray animal or a passing car. Instead, what she saw was something that would haunt her for years. Standing at her door was a figure, dressed in dark clothing, its face obscured by a strange mask. The mask had a twisted, area smile that seemed permanently etched into its surface, a smile that made Kathleen feel a sense of dread. The figure knocked on her door, standing uncomfortably still as they waited for a response. Kathleen's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the screen, paralyzed with fear. Who was this person? Why were they here so late at night? Her mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. After what seemed like an eternity, the figure reached for the doorknob and tried to turn it. Luckily, Kathleen had locked the door beforehand, but the realization that this person was trying to enter her home made her blood run cold. She watched in horror as the masked figure stopped, then slowly pulled the sleeve of their sweatshirt over their hand and began wiping the doorknob, carefully erasing any fingerprints they might have left behind. The methodical way the figure went about this task The calmness of their movements made it clear to Kathleen that this was no joke. This person had a purpose and was no innocent. She couldn't take her eyes off the screen, praying that they would leave before they tried anything more aggressive. Just as she was about to call the police, the figure turned and walked away, their departure as silent as their arrival. Kathleen quickly ran to a window, peering out into the darkness. She saw the figure cross the street and climb into a car that was parked there out of sight. The engine roared, and the car sped off into the night, leaving Kathleen shaken and alone in her now eerily quiet house. The next morning, Kathleen couldn't shake the unease that had seeped into her bones. She replayed the footage over and over, trying to make sense of what had happened. Why had they come to her house? What if the door had been unlocked? And what had been in the heavy bag the figure had carried? Her neighbors, alarmed by her account of the events, were also concerned. One of them mentioned seeing the figure leave, noting how they had carefully carried a bag as they walked to the car. No one knew what was inside, but the fact that they had gone to such lengths to erase their presence suggested that it was something sinister. Days passed, but the fear did not fade. Kathleen found herself constantly looking back, double-checking every lock and flinching at every unexpected noise. The image of that mask, with its terrifying smile, was seared into her memory, a constant reminder that she had come face to face with something, someone capable of causing real harm. Though the masked intruder never returned, Kathleen could never escape the feeling that they were still out there, watching, waiting for another opportunity. Her home, once a place of comfort and safety, had become a place of dread. Every time she looked at the front door, she was reminded of that terrible night and the unprecedented horror that had almost reached her doorstep.